Hey guys, welcome to the Pastor to Pastor podcast. We are so excited to be with Pastor Greg Suratt right here at his beautiful location at the retreat at Church Creek. And we have a lot to talk about today. I'm super excited. I'm excited about your book that released. I got a copy of it. My mom was actually here on a retreat, got a copy of it. So brought it home. She said, here, read it. And I dove straight in and then found out we were doing this conversation. So super excited to have Pastor Greg with us on the podcast. So.
Awesome to be here. I apologize for the weather and the scenery.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
We can't do a lot about that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's beautiful out here and you guys are wherever you are. Just a rundown. Not that you need credentials laid out for any of this, but I think that honor is so important in the pastor's world, and founder and pastor of Seacoast Church in South Carolina, Charleston, and founder and president of ARC, Association of Related Churches. Former, you stepped away from that position somewhat recently.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So and led that organization for a number of years. We got to see close to 1,000 churches planted.
There's about 1,110, something like that.
So we're in tracking. So amazing. And then founder president of the Pastors Collective, which also sits the retreat at Church Creek as well. And so amazing. So I dove into your book as soon as I got it, because I don't think pastors can ever be too healthy. Mm-hmm. Especially in regards to burnout and some of those conversations. And before we just jump in, I'd love to just know your heart. I mean, you have the retreat at Church Creek. You've written the book. It's obvious this is something that you want to spend the rest of your life pouring into pastors. Just what's your heart for that?
Yeah, you mentioned that I was a founder and president of ARC for several years, and passionately believe in the mission of planting life-giving churches. Still do. Serve on the board. But about 2 years ago, I felt like, we'd started this 3 years ago, and huge need. I mean, George Barney in his surveys talk about 42% of pastors are in burnout, would quit if they could. And we've been doing this for 3 years, a little over 1,500 leaders. We do a survey, 43%, same thing. And that's just the ones that said burnout. Mm-hmm. Then you've got anything from I'm close to that, or I'm just tired, or I just need to get away. We have all of that here. But I decided, you know what? I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this. We're going to figure out, because can you imagine the ripple effect of pastor burnout? We've seen it. We see it in churches, and the ripple effect on families and communities. And so I don't think there's a better investment of my time, effort, money, whatever, than to help pastors live well and finish strong. And that's what we try to do. Yeah,
that's so good. I know one of the conversations we're constantly having that I think a lot of churches and I think a lot of pastors and maybe business leaders underestimate is we use the language spiritual ROI.
Yeah.
And kind of what you said, the ripple effect where, it's like, obviously we need life-giving churches doing evangelism, reaching their city, doing all those things, and the opportunity to reach the pastor who's at the captain of those ships.
Sure.
To, when we can reach one, we can impact 10,000 potentially over 10 years or whatever that, whatever that metric looks like. And so I think that's just super, super important, that we understand the gravity behind the need. And what role do you think COVID played in? Obviously burnout got worse. I mean, I remember I was listening to a Carey Nieuwhof podcast. He talked about the switch from a marathon to a triathlon, that language, where so as soon as you feel like you finished the run, someone hands you a bike and goes, now pedal 300 miles or whatever. And that's kind of how it felt. And for you, because I know you were working with pastors long before this, what have you seen get worse? What's the magnitude of change that COVID brought with it?
Yeah, and there are studies and statistics on that. The burnout issue was climbing, steadily, even before COVID. COVID just ramped it up big time. Carey Nieuwhof uses a triathlon. I would say it went from a marathon relay to a triathlon relay because the goal is not just to finish the race. Mm-hmm. The goal is to hand off the baton because there's going to be more behind you. And and that's a good analogy that Carey gives. It just ramped it up. It was like I told my wife early on during the pandemic, you had the pandemic, you had the racial tension, yep. You had a crazy political thing all in the middle of it. And most of that was worldwide. Mm-hmm. I told my wife in the middle of it, I said, in my 40 years of ministry, this is the biggest leadership challenge that I've ever seen, ever, by far. And what's interesting to me is we all have antidotes. I mean, I hear them out here all the time. Everybody has them. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting to me is I thought, okay, post-COVID, we're kind of getting away from it. It does feel a little bit different, although, by the way, we have elections coming up, in November and every 4 years after that.
The dreaded November,
yeah. And so, that will put added stress on pastors.
Yep, absolutely.
But aside from that, I thought that the burnout rate would quickly decline, that, that whole thing, and it hasn't. Mm-hmm. It hasn't. It's, at least in our surveys, it's still the same. And COVID happened, and COVID is kind of over, but COVID changed everything.
Yep.
It changed how we work. It changed church attendance patterns.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's a lot of residue still from that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the PTSD type language almost, especially with a 4-year cycle. And, it felt like every time, I think in a lot of spaces, I'm in Florida, you're in Charleston, I think about other parts. We got a lot of pastor friends in New York, and, we kind of, after the first 6 months, we kind of locked into a normal wave and stuff like that. But, a lot of places in the country, it's like every 6 months, the whole thing shut down, and you kind of got used to this cycle of chaos and stress, and then as soon as you feel like things are getting better, the rug gets yanked out from underneath you. And so I know for a lot of pastors in other states and other cities, it felt even worse than
anecdotally. One of the things you're saying is that COVID was not experienced the same everywhere, which it wasn't.
Right.
Politics were involved, and all kinds of things were involved. I was with a group of pastors from New York that came here recently, and a couple of different groups. And they said something I hadn't even thought about, that the aftermath of that is the one thing that they never hear is, oh, hey, we're going to move to New York.
Right.
Or, hey, we're going to retire here.
Right.
I mean, there's been a mass exodus from a lot of those cities.
Yeah.
I know we've experienced it here in Charleston, the influx, not the exodus.
Right.
And so that adds to it. It's, okay, you had this, and now we've got, our key leaders. We want to celebrate with them that they're going to Florida, or they're going to South Carolina or Texas, or wherever it happens to be. But how does that impact the church?
Right.
And so you've got, it's just so many dimensions.
Right. Well, and then add a layer to that, which you referenced a couple times in the book too, which is, in their departure, you're not just saying goodbye to church members, but you're saying goodbye to 3 generations of kids that you went to the hospital and visited when they were born, and their parents. And you had their grandparents originally, you married the parents, and then you dedicated the grandchildren, and in one fell swoop, it feels like this all this energy you've invested into these people in your church, they're departing. And I mean, that in of itself is gut-wrenching at every turn for a pastor.
Oh, it is. And as you were talking about, I'm thinking, especially, and you may be talking essentially about a situation where, hey, we're kind of excited for you, but I know you got to make those choices. What about the ones that went, we don't like you anymore, and we're going to post on Facebook that, hey, we've found a real church that preaches the word of God.
Right.
Which means they see things just like we do, okay? And the trauma from that is huge. It is huge. I know when I started Seacoast, how many every year, 36 years coming up Easter. When people left, they just kind of left. All right. And it's always hard because it's relational, you know, and I haven't found the I don't care button yet. I'm still looking for that.
Right.
But so it's always hard. But back then somebody called you, or maybe they just didn't do it anymore. These days it's all over social media. And then you look at the comments, and their friends who currently attend your church, and some of them are your good friends or whatever, are going, oh, wow, happy for you, and maybe we'll come, or, you know, all of that whole deal.
Yeah.
You know, I hear that story over and over and over again. Yeah. And it just re-injures, reopens, you know, whatever the wound. And it's not that people have to stay in the same church forever. And sometimes it's a God thing. You know, it's his option to shuffle the decks.
Sure.
If he wants to. And that's fine. That's good. But we are relational creatures.
Yeah.
And pastors get wounded. And I tell our guys that come to the retreat, somebody told me a long time ago, I wish this was my saying, but it's not, but that a pastor needs a tender heart and thick skin. And but the truth is, at times we get a hard heart because we want to protect it, and thin-skinned and hear everything as being about us, which it really isn't, but that's kind of how we find ourselves. And so that perpetuates the kind of the downward slide.
This is just, I'm always curious about this with any pastor, especially pastors that have seen quite a bit of success in the church world, in the social media construct. Are you kind of like a stay out of the comments kind of guy? Like the more you get into the comments, the more you see feedback you don't want to see, or people's you know.
Yeah, I'd love to say, and I've heard guys say it and I don't believe them, that they never look at the comments. Okay. You try to discipline yourself, because at some level, it depends on the social media deal. You're going to get that. I mean, and so you try to stay out of it. My wife will say you get 100 compliments and you get one, and so you look at that.
All you can see.
Yeah. And I try to discipline myself not to do that, and I'm pretty successful most of the time. But it hurts.
Yeah. And I think that again feeds into just the conversation, which is we're talking about burnout, we're talking about pastors that are hurting, we're talking about all these things, and like you said, when people leave, it's relational, it hurts, and even you reference, like, you know, you hope for the phone call. You hope for, you know, some sort of reconciliation moment to just say, like, hey, we don't hate you. We do love you. We're glad for the time we had. But I mean, I've only been pastor and lead pastor now for 6 years. Those are few and far between.
You don't get those. You don't get those. And you know what? We're not owed that. We really aren't.
Sure.
And we can get kind of an entitlement mentality that we do. And some of that comes from maybe not having a gratitude practice in our life, because that's really, really important. And we talk about that, I think, in the book. But we're not owed anything, but still, we're human beings. And, it hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. So compounding stress. Now, you said something just a minute ago I wanted to come back to. You talked about the relay component. Yeah. That it's not just a race, it's a relay. Someone's got to come behind this thing. Someone's got to pick up the mantle. I took over from my dad. You guys did a transition at Seacoast. You know what I mean? Tell me about that. I mean, just in a brief narrative, but what was the duration? How, a lot of success, obviously, behind it. So.
When I got close to 60 years old, probably, I never even thought about it before then. And then several things began to happen with me. I began to get a vision for, or a desire for, a broader audience a narrower audience of pastors, but a broader audience of pastors. You understand what I'm saying? Yep. And, that was a part of ARC and ultimately led to this. But I began to get a little uncomfortable in what I was doing, which you do from time to time, and you just get through it. But I also saw a bit of a generation gap effect, which I'd never felt before. When we started Seacoast, we were 32 years old, and we had a bunch of 20s and 30-somethings that started. And I remember when we had our first gray-headed person come to church. I remember it. I remember the weekend it happened. We were so excited. It was like, of course, part of it was selfish. We thought if they have gray hair, they have money.
That's right.
We didn't have any.
Right,
They could help us to keep going.
And they can do all the counseling too.
Oh,
That'd be great.
all of that.
Wisdom.
And it happened to be a pastor that came who unfortunately had spent some time in jail for an unfortunate financial situation, but he was an awesome guy.
Yeah.
And he and his wife stayed with us forever, and ultimately came on staff after a bunch of years, and was on staff till he was 80 years old. Wow. But so I remember the first grayhead, and we were excited. And as I approached 60, I would look out and I would see people that looked a lot like me, and we tend to reach a generation to 2 generations above and below where we're at. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, in one of my goals, I don't know if it's God's goal, I don't know if it's a good goal, but it's my goal, was that Seacoast be a prevailing church for multiple generations, not just a generation. Yeah. That didn't happen very often. Usually you got a founder, and then it kind of,
Fizzles,
and so one of my goals was that we be multi-generational, have a significant impact. And I saw that we were narrowing the impact on a younger generation and broadening it with me. And so I began to think about all that. And then one year, I was doing a vision message, and I love vision messages. I live for vision. I like movies that have these vision talks, and it's let's take the mountain. And so I'm getting ready to do a vision message, which is my thing, and I've got nothing. Now, I can give you a vision even when I have nothing. Sure. I really can. Yeah. You can just reach deep down inside, and we're going to, whatever. But it wasn't authentic. And so I asked my counselor, who wrote the book with me, Chip Judd, and I said, what's up with this? I feel guilty because that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm not. And he said, is it possible that the burden has lifted, and there's more, but it's not what you're doing right now? And then he said something that really made me mad. He said, Greg, you will not build the church for the next generation.
Yeah.
He said, now you can build the leaders of the church for the next generation. Yeah. I really did. I walked away and I said, he's crazy. Yeah. I can do this. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Right. And it settled down inside that he was right. Yeah. That I could build the leaders for the next generation, but even anecdotally, it's not happening here. Yeah. And so we made a transition, and it was over a period of time. We never actually had a handoff service. It's just because it's my own deal. I know that about 65% of the people in any audience are predisposed not to like change. Yeah. You say, let's change something. They're like, why? I like what it is.
Right.
And so at Seacoast, we've never really changed anything. We've changed everything, but we just tweak it and we don't announce it.
Yeah.
And so we did that with the transition, and people got it. I mean, they knew what was going on. But
sure.
But it's been, on this end of it, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
I sit on the front row now. My job is to cheer on the next generation that's leading. And beautiful. I walk out in the foyer, and it's like, you've got people like me, but you've got so many next generation.
Come on.
And so it's working.
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
They're just doing great. I kid Josh. I tell him, I said, you need to know the difference. Josh is my son that leads the team. I said, you need to know the difference between momentum and just a good tailwind. I said, you're just on a good tailwind still. But that's not true.
Yeah. I read that conversation in the chapter on the book with the conversation between you and Chip. My eyes kind of lit up a little bit when I saw that. I was like, whew. Because that's kind of gut-wrenching, I would think, to especially when you're not really seeking that kind of answer or that kind of wisdom. At least it didn't seem that way. No. The way the chapter is written, it's just kind of, you're in your lane, you're doing your thing, and someone comes along and says, hey, by the way.
I was in my lane doing my thing, but my thing wasn't working like I think it should. And so I had to realize that there's a problem. If he'd have just told me, hey, I got a word from God and this is what it is, I probably wouldn't have received it. But I had a problem.
Yeah.
And
some wisdom there. Yeah, because I think that, the one of the things that we've been talking about a little bit, and it goes with the Barna studies and things that you're well aware of, but the next 10 years that I think is problematic, that we're still trying to figure out a way to help solve some problems for the pastors in the network, and is the boomer pastor epidemic.
Yeah.
Over the next 10 years, that we're not planning churches fast enough to replace the boomer pastors that are going to leave over the next decade. And along with what you're talking about, the boomer pastors, they can barely see tomorrow because they're running on fumes, let alone 5 years from now to create a transition plan and raise up a generation and do all these components. And so, a lot of people talk about the state of the church right now under a lot of the pastors that are averaging 60, 65, 70, and they think it's bad now. But in the back of my mind and in a lot of conversations that I know you're a part of, a lot of them, we're going, this is nothing compared to what's coming 10 years from now if we don't come up with some solutions for how to help pastors and help with transitions and some of those things.
Oh, yeah. And on the other side of that is you have a whole generation of baby boomer pastors that have done well and, done a lot of unique things in reaching their own generation. And I firmly believe that that's a lot of horsepower. That's a lot of vision. That's a lot of, once you get those guys to realize that this is not all there is, that God has more, that he's raising up a Caleb generation, and they don't have to stay in that. They can, let me just say this about Caleb. This is my view on Caleb. So Caleb's 40, he's taking on giants. He's awesome. Now he's 80, and he says, I can take that mountain. I'm as young as I ever was. No, he's delusional.
You're right.
He's not, but he's smart. And he takes the mountain, not with his own strength, but he does it through other people. If you read the story, he does it through other people. And that's what I think that boomer pastors, if we can, at the appropriate time, unleash ourselves from the work that we've created and trust, spelled Trust, don't meddle back in it, trust the next generation that you didn't do it all right. They're not going to do it all right.
Right.
Trust them. And then move over here and take that energy, take that vitality, take the vision, and let's help these guys.
It's huge.
Let's let them do the heavy lifting.
Yep.
And let's help. We can, and things like what we're doing right here at Church Creek. We want to employ boomer pastors to help with next generation pastors.
Yeah.
I firmly believe the phrase that I'm meditating on right now is that you've got to be well in order to build well. And so that's our lane.
Yeah.
We want to help them be well so they can build well. And I want all the boomer pastors, if you're listening to this, you talk to me. God loves you, and I have a wonderful plan for your life.
Come on. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's how honestly, that's how we got to the table now. And my dad, Pastor Dan Livingston, with Pastor to Pastor being here, and just the vision and we have a lane that we were running in, and it just so happened to merge with Coach Creek. Then we took a step back and said, listen, we don't need to reinvent wheels around here. Let's just pour all the gas we can.
Let's do it together.
Doing it together,
Yeah.
And so, we are so excited for the opportunity to be able to come alongside Coach Creek and because it's so necessary. And I wanted to ask you, because obviously your heart is burdened, but there was a key moment in ministry for you with your friend and staff member. I didn't realize that until I read the book that he had come on staff with you, but with Darren and his story, and obviously that was a hinge point for you recognizing. You probably always knew it. I don't want to rob you from that, but always knowing how desperate we as pastors needed help. But that was a big moment for you.
Oh, it was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Darren he and Mark Driscoll founded Acts 29, a great church planting movement. And he built a great church in St. Louis, really did, just an amazing church. And then he had a fall. I mean, a lot of things led to it, but he called me during that time. We were friends. We'd been friends for a while, and he said, I need a pastor. Would you be my pastor? And I said, sure. And so helped walk him through some restoration from what had happened in his past. And it had more to do with like being abusive to staff and a lot of that kind of thing. And a lot of it had to do with some daddy issues that he had, some wounds that he never really dealt with. And so we developed a relationship and walked together. And 2 or 3 years into the restoration process, we asked him to tell his story to pastors. And then we asked him to, he was gifted preacher, really gifted, and one of the best communicators I've ever heard. So we asked him to be on the team. And he lived in St. Louis, great family. And we said we put no pressure on. I believe that in the future there will be more fractional leadership. In other words, you don't have to have a full-time, you put in the name, and everybody doesn't have to live in the same place. I mean, we're seeing that in the tech industry and everywhere else. And so we said to him, Darren, you don't have to live here. You've got roots in St. Louis. But they wanted to move. And so they came out to look for schools and all that kind of thing on the week that the country shut down, March 15th, something like that. And that may have been, a trigger that triggered him. I don't know, but I know he was real sad about that. We're not going to be able to move because they couldn't get the kids settled. Everything's changed. What do we do now? And then in May, he preached on a Sunday and took his own life on that Thursday. And I had talked to him the day that he took his life, and I had no indicators. I mean, I knew it was sad. I knew all of that. But I had no indicators that was happening. And immediately, because my heart had been leaning toward, I want to help pastors. I had done some retreats for pastors in Montana with just a great friend of mine, Brian Carpenter there. And but when this happened, it was like, wow, I was devastated. I mean, my devastation is so small compared to his family. Let me just say that. They're wonderful people. Amy is one of the most amazing women I know anywhere, and the kids are resilient and doing well as they can in that situation. But it was devastating, and I had feelings like, who are you to help pastors when you can't even help your own friend? And some guys came around me and said, I believe God is dropping something into your heart, and you don't need to back off. And shortly after that, a piece of land became available here in Charleston. Wasn't looking. Guy said he'd give it to us for free. And so it took us about 3 or 4 months to figure out how much free costs. And it was too expensive.
Really expensive free.
It was really expensive free. And again, if you're a pastor, you know what this is like. You get a vision from God. This is it. This is the building. This is the land. This is where we're going. This is awesome. Oh my gosh, what happened? And it was bigger than that with Darren. But in the follow-up, it was like, man, I thought we started to get really excited about doing something for pastors, and then it falls through. Fortunately, I've been around the block a time or two. It's not my first rodeo. Kind of know that's how the process goes. And then just, I think 10 days later, one of our trustees calls me up. He said, I want you to see something that I've seen. Brought me to this property. And when you come onto the gate's right out there, you might be able to see it. You can't see the gate, but it's on the other side of this pond. And as you come into the gate, you just feel peace. You just experience peace. And we feel like this place was created by God Almighty to do what it's doing.
Come on.
The people that owned it before us were caretakers. And they feel like that too, that they, that we wouldn't have gotten it. They had many offers that were better than ours. And, so we started doing retreats, and, it was a dark journey that had, that has a good future.
Yeah.
And,
So I think, the redemptive narrative is so powerful, but it doesn't negate pain. And that's the hard part.
I still, from time to time, will think about Darren and cry.
Yeah.
That's just part of the process.
Sure. Yeah. And how loss can drive us. It's unfortunate that sometimes loss drives us with vision, but at least it does drive us, and I know that in my personal life. And I think it was so great. I think your transparency in the book was great about saying, if I couldn't help my friend, why do I have any business helping other pastors? And I think there's even pastors that are out there thinking to themselves, there's some days I don't want to get up.
Yeah.
What do I have to? What business do I have preaching to a church when there's when I don't always feel like doing this, or what? And what a strategic way the enemy likes to get in, and sometimes it's not even the enemy; it's just exhaustion. And
it can be.
I think he can use that, but I think a lot of times that's just what it is.
Oh, it is, and that's not the voice of Jesus you're hearing, by the way.
Come on,
it's not the voice of Jesus.
That's powerful.
You look at Old Testament leaders. Find me a perfect one. Okay,
right.
I remember one year, and New Testament leaders too.
Yeah.
But I remember one year we were going to do a family series, and we said, let's base it on a biblical family. They're all jacked up. We couldn't find one that was, this wonderful, because that's the story of life. And God uses imperfect people.
Yeah.
And doesn't mean we want to be imperfect, because there are consequences with that.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's not the voice of Jesus. That's the voice of the enemy.
Yeah.
Recognize it, and put it in its proper place.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love it. And so, tell me, perfect scenario, 10 years from now, is there a goal for the retreat at Church Creek, just the whole organization as a whole? I know I've heard different language shaped around what you'd love to see in 1,000 pastors, stuff like that. But is there a goal for you'd love to see happen over the next 10 years?
Well, the first one, let's go 5 years.
Okay.
I don't know if I can see 10.
All right, great.
I'm going to be around 10, I hope. I believe that. But we'd like to serve 10,000 pastors in the next 5 years.
Come on.
And help them live well and finish strong.
Come on.
And we're developing some aftercare things that I think will be very, very helpful too. The retreat's amazing. I mean, we do surveys at the end of the week, and 51% say that it was life-changing.
Yeah.
51% life-changing. Another 47% say it was extremely helpful. And then the other 4%, they're dead to us.
They were sleeping. They
were sleeping. They weren't paying attention. No. But so we feel like we've got lightning in a bottle here. It's like God meets us here every week.
Yeah.
And we want to do some aftercare things that I think will be helpful too. But we want to help 10,000 pastors.
That's beautiful.
Live well, finish strong.
That's amazing. And I know there's a lot of help and assistance for pastors getting here as well. And so for pastors that are listening or anything like that, I know.
The price is right.
Price is right.
It's free. I raise a lot of money.
Yeah.
And if you want to help with that, we would love that.
Sure.
We do a pay it forward kind of a thing.
Yeah.
We say, hey, listen, if it's helpful to you, when you get a chance, help somebody else. And it's been amazing how God's met the need.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I want I'll let pastors out there know, you need it more than you think you do. A, B, you can afford it.
Yeah.
And so, and then C, just don't let the fear of the unknown stop you. I went on a pastor's retreat in 2022. was my first one. And it wasn't here. It was at a different location with a pastor friend that we share in common. And it changed my life. And I mean, the opportunity to finally be vulnerable with people you don't have to worry about going to your board or any of that stuff, just, to sit down, be vulnerable and deal with some real stuff, and take the mask off for once, Pastor, take the mask off. And I know it's terrifying.
One of my favorite quotes by C.S. Lewis. And if you quote C.S. Lewis, people think you're smarter than you are. So you ought to throw that in every once in a while.
Yeah.
But C.S. Lewis said that friendship is born in the moment that one person says to another, "What, you two? I thought I was the only one." And that's what you experience at a place like this. And what we do is, it's not like we come and cry. That happens, yes.
Yeah.
We come and play and have fun and meet new people. Barna says that the two biggest issues that pastors self-identify are the stress of the job, which we could talk forever about what that's about, and the loneliness and isolation. That's self-identified. That's what the two big issues are. And we try to introduce you to a massive dose of stress-free. We got all kind of fun things to do. You can do them all, do none of them.
Yep.
Our most popular thing are stress-free or guilt-free naps. You don't have anybody here.
That's right. Yeah.
Just take a nap. But and then we introduce you to relationships. And when you share, like you said, at a vulnerable level, something happens kind of in the spirit.
Yep.
And we've had guys that go out of here that are lifelong friends, and that type of thing. And I do want to say, some people might say, well, I'm not at the edge of burnout. Number one, you may be self-deceived. You might be there, but you might not be.
Yeah.
And that everybody that comes here is not at the edge of burnout or in burnout. It's just, how about proactive?
Yeah.
How about let's do something before we get to an area and learn some rhythms, which we teach some rhythms of rest.
Yeah.
And
it's like you talked about too, I think in the book, don't confuse your adrenaline with a lack of burnout. How adrenaline fuels you, the next thing, and vision and ambition. But, just because you have plenty of adrenaline coming off of the ambition and because things are working right now, doesn't mean you're not.
And because you're doing energy drinks and all that stuff.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think the mask behind things working in your church, success, numbers, metrics, all those things, is they're really good at masking what's the problem on the inside, because success has a way of making you feel like you're doing better than you are. Especially internally.
Oh yeah. Well, even with a church, I was talking to a team the other day, and they're in a rapid growing kind of a phase, and we're talking about finances, and they were making some terrible financial decisions, and I said, rapid growth will hide a multitude of sin, but this will come back and bite you at some point. And so, when you're in a growing, things are good and all of that, it's great, it's awesome, but it can mask a lot of stuff that won't get you there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what do we tell the pastor who feels like he's all alone, who and is not connected to ARC or Acts 29 or any of those things, what from your heart, what would you tell that pastor who feels like he's on an island? Yeah.
Number one, if you can get to the retreat, get to the retreat.
Yeah.
We'll fix that for you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's ideal. And the retreat is not all ARC. It's, I think about 60%, something like that, 55-60% of the guys and girls, we have women's retreats too, that come are ARC, but you've got 40% that are everything. We've had, everything from non-denominational, Anglican priests, Baptists. We've had whole groups of Baptists, and Methodists are really having a hard time right now with all the stuff going on, and we've worked with and dealt with, some Methodist pastors. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, whatever. Find something like this, because there's hope. I mean, not just hope. This isolation, lonely thing can be can be dealt with very, very quickly. If you can't get to a retreat, just ask the Lord, say, God, open up a door. I mean, God is able. We talk to our churches all the time about how God wants to help us and that we need to cry out to him. I would say cry out to him and then proactively see if there's somebody, in your city. Sometimes it's hard in your city because it gets a little competitive, whether we say so or not. It gets a little weird sometimes. But there may be somebody that is outside of your city or part of your denomination or your network or whatever. And I would just say, hey, ask somebody for coffee. Never say no for somebody.
Yeah. That's big.
And let's see if relationships develop. Yeah. We do it super speed, but you don't have to come someplace like this in your own community. Recognize your need for it and ask the Lord about it. Put it at the top of your priorities. Reach out to somebody, say, let me buy coffee for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you might have to reach out to 4 or 5 somebodies. Let me buy coffee. And then when you find relationships that seem to work, that there's potential for, then I would encourage you to go below the surface. We do that just by asking a couple of questions. What's your high? What's your low? And that helps us get below the surface here, and it's amazing what happens with it. We practice it as a family.
Okay.
And I was just telling Chip Judd, I was telling somebody else the other day that I have tasted what it feels like to have significant relationships with real conversation. I don't have much taste for like the pastor deal, for the whatever it is, pastor speak, or because there's so much life out there waiting for you.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, we're so grateful. And, just for our audience, one of our goals, like you said, we want to do this together. And so one of our goals is we're adding Zoom calls constantly where pastors from all over the nation can just jump on and just start gaining some comfortability. And I totally agree. There's nothing that can replace face-to-face interactions and authenticity, like either in your own city, out of retreat. But one of the things I will tell you for those that are listening is if you're one of those people that you recognize the need for it, but you're just not sure that you can do it, or the idea of going and being the only person that it doesn't know anybody, which for the record, most of the time people come here, they don't know anybody.
They don't know anybody. That's the best kind of retreat. I love those.
Everyone feels like you're going to get there and everyone knows each other and you're the odd man out. That's not the way it works. But nonetheless, you can at least see some faces that we can help get you connected that way. One of our goals is to try to, as pastors on board, is connect 2 or 3 pastors at a time to Church Creek. And that way, at least you know some faces, and over Zoom or something like that, you've had some conversations before you get there to just help you with the process of saying, yes, we just want to see pastors be as healthy as possible. And
it's great.
In your language, live well and finish strong.
Yeah.
And so, however we can help Pastor to Pastor as an organization can help connect you to Pastor Greg and Church Creek and all the things that are happening here. We want to do that. And so take advantage of that. And so, Pastor Greg,
let me just say I'm excited about what you're doing, because we are kind of like we're the fun candy. We're the stimulus that you go, wow, there's a whole new world out there. Then you really, really, if you've got a network of guys that'll walk with you, that's where it's at.
Yeah. Well, we're excited, and we're very grateful. Grateful for your heart. Grateful for all that you've done, and continue to say yes to the kingdom's better for it. So thank you.
Thank you.
For everyone listening right now. Where can they find more information about the retreat at Church Creek in particular?
PastorsCollective.com.
PastorsCollective.com. And so, and then I want to encourage everyone out there, the Endurace Factor, amazing book, but get it, read it. Pastors, leaders in general, honestly, it'll add so much value to your life, and we'll put both of those links, both to the Pastor Collective and to the link to the book in the show notes as well. And so,
great.
Pastor Greg, so grateful. Any additional thoughts?
I'm good, man.
Other than we love pastors and we want to see you do well.
So, love what you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, we're so grateful for your time. Thank you for spending it with us. If you guys need any more information, go to pastortopastor.life. You can find all the information there about what we offer, what we have for you to make sure that, like we said, in Pastor Greg language, that you can be a pastor that lives well and finishes strong. So thank you guys for checking out this episode. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Pastor to Pastor podcast.